When we came to Canada in 2023, we had a very different impression of Canada from a distance than what we witnessed after coming here. I mean, we've come from Pakistan and we reached Canada as permanent residents in 2023 Feb. And before coming to Canada, I had no research over this country. All I knew for a fact was people got impressed from Canada and looked up to and forward to getting Canadian permanent residence or finding any way or means to get into Canada and make it big here. Obviously, people moving to Canada are not from underprivileged backgrounds generally. People are doing very well from wherever they migrate to Canada. That is how they accumulate so much wealth that is required to show as proof of funds or whatever it takes to do the process to come to Canada. But once I reached Canada, I saw the reality, what people go through day in and day out. And the reality I witnessed firsthand is not limited to Canada, meaning it's not something specific to Canada. I think it's pretty much the same in any Western country, be it Australia, the US, the UK, because the the factors that impact you emotionally mainly is the distancing from your loved ones and social exclusion to an extent, especially in the beginning months or the initial period, because nobody knows you in the new land and you're all by yourselves and you're just trying to cope with the challenges because there's a lot to do as new immigrants, especially in the initial years. A lot. I mean, saying a lot does not by any means do justice to the quantity of work that we have to do, because you can pretty much imagine we have to establish a setup in a new land from scratch for ourselves. And that includes all aspects of life, ranging from absorbing the culture shock, dealing with it, finding ways to cope with the situations, finding home for rent, finding a good car, finding a good job, and then doing the domestic chores, cooking food, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, uh, cleaning the floors, mopping, brushing, everything. And then taking care of the children as well, finding good schools for them, finding time to pick and drop children from your home to the bus stop, and then taking them to the doctors whenever they're not feeling good, uh, getting appointments for yourself or your spouse for the doctors, managing time in a way where you can't compromise your work and yet you have to keep all these things going. There's a lot. I'm not saying people don't do a lot from the countries they come from. No doubt there's a lot that they have to go through as well, and they're not rewarded for all that. But the thing is that there's a support system. When you've got people who care about you or are genuinely nice to you or love you, then you can have them share your responsibilities to an extent, and you have somebody you can rely on or count upon whenever there's a requirement. But here you have to do everything yourself. You have to make quick decisions, fruitful decisions, and you can't make mistakes here in Canada. One thing that I've noticed about the Canadian culture is that there's absolutely no room for dumbness. Um, like, this is kind of a norm or an etiquette integrated into people's day to day dealing. I'm talking about the native people or the people that have been living in Canada. Native people might be the indigenous population, that's the Indians. I'm talking about the people who are born and raised in Canada. Their forefathers or great grand forefathers migrated to Canada, maybe from Europe or from anywhere in the world. So the way they behave is that, like, even in the workplace, you don't know something, you ask and people tell you. But let's say you didn't understand and you ask them again, they'll just say, I just told you. They'll tell you again, but they'll impress upon you that they've already told you. Meaning there's absolutely no room for sluggish learning, or you may say mistakes. I mean, obviously, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. I'm talking about the workplace right now, or even about the systems that are in place here. But then you have to correct your mistakes. You have to identify them and do whatever it takes to correct your mistakes. Meaning, I'm not just talking about the workplace. Let's say you rose a claim to your insurance company. You thought you did deserve to be compensated for something, and it turned out that you were not supposed to raise that claim. Now, if they wanted to extend that, they could land you in trouble. You have to figure out if you rose a wrong claim, and you have to pull it back or call them and tell them to cancel that, or if you've been paid, you have to reimburse that payment, things like that. Likewise, when you file taxes, you have to hide nothing. And for newbies, it's a complete system that they have to first comprehend and then do the paperwork to file the taxes. And if something goes wrong, and if it gets interpreted as you not being honest or you hiding something, then obviously they chase you, and that can land you in trouble because of the penalties and compound interest on that. So you have to learn too many things too quick as newbies here in Canada. Ranging from your new job, you might not be comfortable with doing the work that you got the job for, but you have to do it because if not for that, there's no other income coming, especially for people who don't have children here in Canada, because they don't have then the Canada Child Benefit as well. They might be entitled to some other benefits, but they have to check this with the CRA. The thing is that, yes, the new place, the new culture, the new land, there's a lot to learn in a very limited time, and there's no room for mistakes or dumbness or goofiness. Otherwise, you have to eventually pay in dollars for your mistakes. And then, that's just one thing. The other thing that I wanted to talk about really here was like, if I wanted to get a home here, buy a house here in Canada today, God has blessed me with a job that allows me to buy a home in Canada. But then I did not have such a deep understanding of the system that we have to follow to buy a house with mortgage in Canada. Because what happens is that once you get into a contract with a bank, uh, generally the payments are financed for a period ranging from 20 to 30 or upwards of 30, like 35 years. Like, just imagine somebody moving into Canada, like with family, migrating to Canada in mid 30s. Let's say somebody is 35 years old and he migrates to Canada, and then he buys a house on mortgage that he is tied into a contract with the bank of paying for that mortgage for 35 years. 35 years, that person is already aged. At 35 to that makes 70 years old. Do you think, if by any chance that person happens to have his home paid off by the time he turns 70, will that house hold the value for him the same as it holds for him now when he is young? I don't think so. because when you're 70 years old, you have a very different perspective of the world. There is a lot that is gone. There's energy that's gone. There's the yearning or an impetus to grow and flourish or do just your best to struggle to make it big in this world, because 70-year-old people are looking forward to just making it through the tough times, because of the gone health and the very limited people they have to interact with on a day-to-day basis, because they're all busy in their old social circles and daily hustle and bustle. So I don't think that person will have that house as such a valuable investment by the time he turns 70. And for a major chunk of his life, like pretty much all of his life in Canada, he's been into debt. He's been paying off a debt. And it's not nice to be in this situation where you are constantly um, indebted to somebody. Like you have to keep making money to make sure that mortgage gets paid on time, that you don't get thrown out of the home if one, two, or three episodes get missed. So earning here is in itself a challenge because of the scarcity of jobs. There's not so much of a scarcity of jobs. If you look at the unemployment rate in Canada, it's like the last time I checked, it was around 5.8% only. That suggests that nearly 94% people are employed. But the thing is that the kind of employment they have, if they have minimum wage, they'll be earning enough to pay their rents and do the groceries and make ends meet and keep going with the time, but they won't be earning good enough to pay mortgages unless they have very good jobs. And jobs, they can come and go anytime. Jobs are jobs. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you get fired. And not always for your own mistakes. Sometimes because companies are just laying people off to minimize their overhead expenses, or for reasons that make the most sense to the owners, obviously. But jobs are jobs. You can never count on them saying you have a mortgage going on and you have this job that you can count on to pay that mortgage off. Today, you might have a job worth 90,000 Canadian dollars a year. Tomorrow, if you're laid off, I understand that you'd be getting the employment insurance, but then you might be searching jobs and you might just get a job that pays you only $40,000 a year. Then how are you going to pay off your mortgage, the remaining mortgage? What are you going to do then? That you are you going to get your home refinanced, or would you look into the option of selling the home or whatever? So it's just something that uh, either way, it's a little bothersome. On the one hand, people who are renting, like me, constantly see their money going off. Like they say, your rent is somebody's mortgage. So your rent might not be 100% of somebody's mortgage, considering the high interest rates, but it makes a substantial chunk of somebody's mortgage. Maybe 60 or 70% of their mortgage gets paid because of your rent, the money you pay in rent. So you see your money going down the drain every month because you're just renting and you're not really building any equity. So there's this constant feeling, and then the tenants do not always have a very good relationship with the landlords. The landlords have their own concerns, like the cleanliness of the home or the maintenance of the home, things like that. Whereas tenants are the people living there, and once a property is occupied or a thing is used, it can never be like it was when it was unused or was brand new. Things happen, people live, and things need to be maintained to be kept as new. So definitely landlords have that kind of concern. But and then there might come times when you might have to take a stand for to keep your landlord from raising the rent uh, that makes sense to them because of the increasing mortgage, but does not for you because you have a limited income, right? So there's that tension that you always have to deal with as a tenant. You just cannot really relate to or feel at home in the space that you're occupying because deep down you know that's not yours. I come from a place where I've lived in my own home and I know what that feels like. That's a completely different thing. You want to uh, constantly upgrade your home. You want to decorate your home. You want it to look good because you own that place. There's a mental peace and satisfaction that whatever money you're spending on it is kind of an investment because it's taking the value of your home up. Like in Pakistan, where I come from, I remember I got the a tube well drilled in front of my home for ample supply of water, and that was expensive, but I knew that this would provide me with sufficient water, and it would also elevate the price of my property. So I was comfortable doing that, but obviously I would never even think about doing it to somebody else's property because that's not something that matters to me, right? Likewise here as tenants, you're just spending time. You can never relate to the place. You want to, but it just doesn't happen. As human beings, we're not programmed that way to really start relating to the place unless that is in our name, right? So there's this kind of a psychological dilemma that people are constantly coping with here in Canada. On the one hand, there are these tenants, and then on the other hand, there are homeowners who are constantly indebted all their life. And some of them manage to have their homes paid off. Others just, when they feel it's out of their control and they can no more pay the mortgages, they just get the homes either refinanced, just sell them off so that they can just recover the equity and find options for renting that point on. So this is something that Canada, I think, needs to fix because homes are so expensive that there's uh, generally no possibility for a person to buy it with money upfront because nobody has that kind of money like $1 million upfront or $0.7 million or 80% of $1 million upfront when you're making only $2,000 to $5,000 a month, and then the cost of living is so high. The homes are just super duper expensive. This should not have been there. I think Canada needs to find a way to fix this problem for the new immigrants. But then again, since Canada is such a hot destination, so many people from all over the world want to come to Canada that even with this situation that you are indebted to a bank and you are paying mortgages, but then when you see the prices of the property going up and so many people wanting to buy a home, and you know that a property that you bought for only was $600,000 and maybe a year later it is worth $800,000. So definitely, even if you are only 20% owner of that property based on how much you've paid for it or the equity you've built up, that's also appreciation on your equity, right? From $600,000 to $800,000, whatever percentage you own, that percentage also gets enhanced by that amount. So yes, that's pretty much my initial years insights about Canada. I'll keep telling you more and more about life in Canada. Do subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Take care. Bye.